Right, so we're back in the shop. I'm just going to try and get rid of this brown staining and then put a handle on it and sharpen her up. So let's get on with cleaning it up. I've got various things, Scotch Brite, this thing, another one of those, all different grades, and the expander wheel. I don't think I'll need that, I think that's a bit too coarse. So let's start off with that one. I think I'm not quite sure what grade that is. We'll give it a go. It's almost worn out anyway, so it's not going to last very long. Which I think we'll just move the camera a bit so you can see a bit better. Move around from one side. Zoom in. You can already see that takes that brown off quite easily. I'm not pushing all that hard. I use these for just putting an edge on my shearing knives. I don't even know really what they're called. They come from China, all covered in Chinese writing. But they come in various grits, or various coarsenesses, abrasivenesses, or whatever they call them. This one I think is quite a fine one because it's not sort of taking much off. It's very, very fine. You see there it's giving a bit of a satin finish, and that's the brown still. I don't normally have the grinder on the, or the polisher on the anvil. Get rid of that one, that one's had it. But where I normally have it, right around the back of the shop, it's really dark, so I just thought I'd bring it around the front here. Easier to see. Now you see the difference in that one's a lot coarser because it's actually taking something off. Actually this one's probably better to start with, to get the worst of it out. A little bit more aggressive. Yeah, you can see that's taking it off much better. That's the brown side still. Give it a go on there. You can still see those marks where I hammered it when I was hardening it. I'm really annoyed about those. But never mind. You live and learn. As it's only for my own personal use, it doesn't make any odds really. I'm not making it for anybody, so no one to complain. You can see there now I'm going the opposite way. What sort of finish it gives. Well, I'm bound to get someone say, oh, you should only polish in one direction. You can polish whichever direction you like in my shop, mate. You might only polish in one direction in your shop, but mine you can go wherever you like. So we'll just keep going. This is actually, in a way, when I'm working on the actual sort of cutting edge, thinning that out for me a little bit as well, so that's going to make sharpening it slightly easier, I think, because it's sort of got, putting more of an edge on it already. I say that's what I do with my shearing knives, so once I run this over the whetstone, hopefully we'll be able to get a decent edge on it. And if my last one's anything to go by, they do hold a good edge. It's good steel, this. I had someone comment on the first part of this video, what steel is it? Well, I'm afraid I don't know exactly. All I know is it's high carbon steel of some description. It's not just case hardened, which is what he thought. This is solid high carbon steel. They've been making these for many, many years. As they cost nearly £100 a box, they better be pretty good. Right, so we put the mop on now. I'll put a bit of fairly coarse soap on it. Give it a go. So I'm not 100% worried what it finishes like. I don't want mirror finish. I want to end up with a sort of a satiny finish. I'm going to get the worst of it out with all this mucking about, and then I'll probably just run over very lightly with one of those, I don't know what they're called, I still don't know what they're called, the disc I used to start with, just very lightly, just to give it a real satiny finish. But I want to get a lot of the marks out to start with. And this coarse soap is pretty ideal for getting out a lot of fine marks. You're not doing this sort of thing all the time. I don't know the best procedures, but I just muddle along in my own way and get there in the end. If I was doing this all the time and I was set up for it, I'd probably have a million different grades of belt from a belt sander, which would do each of these processes in no time. But this is all done on a budget, and well, not necessarily on a budget, but because I don't do it all the time, I don't feel the need to buy all the equipment, because I'm not doing it day in, day out. If I was, obviously, then I would buy all the equipment, but this just goes to show you can do all this sort of thing in virtually any garage, shed, backyard, without too many specialised tools. Obviously you've got to have some, but if I didn't have this, I'd end up doing it with wet and dry. Just get finer and finer wet and dry, which is what I did on my very first Farrier's rasp knife, which you can go and take a look at. I spent hours and hours with wet and dry. Alright, I'm going to call it a day, go and put the handles on, so let's drill them. So I have no idea what this wood is. All I know is I like the colour. It might be teak. Don't know what it is, but it's a pretty hard wood. I like the colour. It's all I've got lying about, because I've run out of oak, which I had a few bits of when we used to have a company making bespoke window and doors. We used to get loads of lovely offcuts of oak and teak and all sorts of exotic woods. And now they've gone. There's no skip to go diving in. I'll just do the other side. That's got it. Right, next problem. Pins. Now, I want to use this stainless steel, but it's too big. I didn't actually think about that when I drilled the holes in the tang. If I'd thought about it, I would have drilled the holes in the tang to suit this bit of quarter. But obviously I didn't. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. So I'm just going to quickly thin it down. This is probably much easier than sticking it up in the lathe. With it being so thin and stainless, it doesn't turn all that well in the lathe when it's so narrow. So this is quite an easy way of doing it. Just stick it in your drill and rub it against a moving abrasive belt. Shouldn't take too long. If this was brass or something, I would have probably done it in the lathe, but stainless, you need really good tip tools to turn it successfully when it's this small. Otherwise you end up catching it and it bends and breaks everything in the bloody lathe. Right, we're getting there. In fact, I think that might be it. Let's try it in the tang. Yep, look at that, lovely. Perfect. That's just a good fit. Not too sloppy, not too tight. So let's give it a clean up, see if we can epoxy some handles on. Right, I'm just going to give everything a quick wipe over with acetone. I normally use denatured alcohol, or meths as it's known over here, but I've got just happened to be to hand was the acetone, so I'm just going to give everything a quick wipe over with that, get any grease, muck off it, the pins and the as well. Now I've got some epoxy which I've never used before because I couldn't get the one I normally use, so I've got this, not sure what this one's called, but it's obviously two part, it's two small tubes, and it's supposed to have quite a long work time, which I'm not sure if it's a good idea or not. That's the Araldite, that's the one I got because I couldn't get the one I normally use. So we're just going to squirt a couple of lengths of that down. This is a clear one. I say clear, relatively clear. It'll go sort of milky, but it's not a dark one, put it that way. So I'm just going to give it a quick mix up. I don't do an awful lot of epoxying, which is why I generally don't buy large quantities, but I do like a larger quantity than those two tiny little tubes because it's just so expensive otherwise. And it lasts, provided you keep the temperature down and keep it in a controlled environment, it lasts pretty well. Alright, I think that's about it. Give it these. I'm going to put it on the tang first, I think. Now, I'm sorry you can't. I'm just getting out of shot. Of course, I'm concentrating on what I'm doing and not what you're seeing, unfortunately. I do realise in a minute. There we go, I've realised. Bring it down a bit. Of course, then it goes out of shot again, but never mind. You know, you can see what I'm doing. I'm just basically smothering it. Now, what I should have done as well was mark the handles, the scales, which side was which, because I haven't and I can't remember, and they are handed. They can't go upside down because they'll stick out one side rather than the other. I'm just trying to figure it out. I think that's okay on that one. Just checking to see if it's in the right place. No, I don't know whether it is or not, that one. Does that one go that way? No, definitely goes the way I had it in the first place. Now I'm quite glad it's got a long working time because I'm going to be mucking about, I think. Is that way around? Yeah, I think that's it. Right, knock the pins in. Give it a bit of a squeeze. I'm going to set it up with these clamps for overnight. These are great, these clamps. I get a lot of people ask about them. They're made by Bessie. They do all sorts of different ones, but I've got two different sorts, but these I use all the time, as you can tell. So if you're interested, go to bessie.com or .co.uk. Right, so that's squeezing out nicely. I didn't think I had enough epoxy in there, but you can see once it's squeezed together how much, oh there we go, drop it all over the place, squeezes out. So I'm just going to fill in any little gaps that I can see. Don't want to waste it all. There is one or two little bits I can see that haven't got any in. Not many, but I'm just going to spread it about. Now, I'm not really sure what I'm up to now. I think I'm just going to leave it at that. You can see it's get me nail, take a bit off. See, it's still squeezing out. Obviously once this gets ground, most of that will disappear, because I shall grind it back to the metal top and bottom, and round the back there, but I want to make sure it's all good and glued. Just going to put a few little bits around there. I think I'm probably being a bit fussy. Come on, Gary, stop fussing about, that'll do. I think this said it's got about a 90-minute work time. So, if you're in a hurry, this isn't the one to buy. They do a rapid one, which I think sets in about 10 minutes or something ridiculous. But it was even more expensive, and at the end of the day, I didn't need anything to set up that quick. As I say, I don't do enough of this. I suppose it's quite handy at times, but I've got a bit of epoxy on there. I'll have to get my acetone on that. Get that off of there. Right, so that's how I'm going to leave it overnight or so. In fact, it's going to be at least 2 nights because I won't be in tomorrow. You can see that the blade's got a few little marks in it still, but until I've got it sharpened, that'll be absolutely fine. Okay, so we're back in the shop. It's about a week to 10 days later, because I've been pretty busy. But as you can see, it's gone nice and hard now. And I've just taken the ends off these pins with a grinder so we can get started. But before we do, although this hasn't been thoroughly sharpened yet, it is a bit sharp, so I'm just going to put a bit of protection over it. It's just the case cardboard cover that comes with these rasps with a bit of tape wrapped around it, just to give me something to hold on to so it's not going to slice my fingers if it catches up. So we've got the ceramic belt on, just get the tracking right, and this is I think it's a 36 grit, something like that. And you can see there's some hellish dust coming off it. I hate to work in a woodwork shop full time. It just goes everywhere, this dust. So I'm just taking it down until the spine, you can see, is almost touching. Again, just take it right off until the metal touches. I don't think I've ever done a knife with this type of handle before. Can't remember what my big hacksaw blade handles were like. I know I used a bit of oak, but I can't remember how I put them on. I'll have to have a look back. But I certainly didn't have the bench grinder at the time, so that's obviously fairly recent build. I did Now you can see I've just got a little bit of epoxy still there. I just want to get that out, so I'm going to take a bit more off. Yeah, I was going to say I did set the table and the platen at 90 degrees to each other before we started. It's going, nearly gone. So hopefully this should be fairly even. There we go, gone. I just want to do the underside now. You can see how much dust just tears off it. I suppose if it was in a woodwork shop you'd have, you can see there, that's virtually all epoxy in there. I just want to get that out as well. Yeah, I suppose if you worked in a woodwork shop you would have all vacuums everywhere sucking it all out. It's just touching there. Do a bit more. But when you're not used to having to extract so much dust, it's a blooming pain. Just going to try and even that up a bit. I think that's just about the top and the bottom, so we might just as well take a few little bits off the edges. I'm obviously going to have to do a little bit of this by hand, but the more I can do with this machine the better. It does tear it off. It's pretty good, this belt. And I'm not, you know, pushing it really hard onto the belt. As you saw in my last video, the belt, one of the belts snapped, and that was the cheap and nasty ones, and it was banging across the join. Now these are the more expensive ceramic belts, and you'd have a job to tell where it was going over the join. You know, they've really got it sussed. So I think same old saying, get what you pay for. Well, as usual with most of my videos, I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm sort of playing about. I've just moved the belt over there with the tracking just to get it right to the edge of the platen so I can get right up tight to the join between the handle and the blade. And do the same, do those front edges, I don't know what you'd call them. You can see what I'm doing anyway. Just track it back again to the middle. When I built this belt sander, I didn't think I was going to use it. I thought it was going to be a good build, but a bit of a white elephant, but I use it so much. I really use it all the time now for all sorts of things. It's such a handy tool for all sorts of little projects. As such, I'm starting to build up a collection of belts. Obviously they're quite an outlay if you buy sort of 10 at a time, especially if you buy the expensive ones, which, as you've probably seen, is well worth it. And they do last a lot longer if you buy the good ones, obviously depending on what you're doing with them, but normal everyday use. Now I don't know if you can see that, probably not, that this side is a bit thicker. So I'm just going to take a run across there, thin it out a little bit more. You know, I was saying about the belts, you know, it's nice to have a real good selection. I've only got about 3 or 4 different grits at the moment, but you know, as different jobs come in, I will purchase new ones. Doing this up the top here on this sort of slack bit of the belt is really quite nice. You can get a bit of shape into it. So, I think we're going to call it a day on the machine and go and do a bit by hand. Right, just wedged it up with a couple of bits of wood so it doesn't damage it, and I've got a rasp, surprisingly, one of my old ones. I'm just going to rough it out a bit more. Trying not to split it at all, because this is, although I'm using the smooth side, it's still quite coarse. And I think this wood, I have no idea what it is, I'm still stuck, but it's pretty hard wood, so I don't think it'll split too badly. Now, just got, this is again an old belt, but this is from a 3-inch handheld belt sander that I had years ago that broke. I've just got a couple of old belts lying about, and they're quite handy for doing this sort of thing, not only on wood but steel and all sorts of things. I try not to throw too many of them away. Obviously space is at a premium, so tucking a few old belts away in a cupboard somewhere, they do come in handy. Use them on the lathe and various little jobs. This one's quite coarse. I think this is probably a 40, or maybe, I don't know, maybe less, maybe 36, I don't know. It's quite coarse, but it's still giving quite a nice finish. So I'm just going to turn it over, try and do the other side. These rasps are really good for roughing out woodwork. Even when they're quite blunt, they're really good for wood. I sold loads and loads to people for woodwork over the years, before they became popular for knife making. There was a time where that didn't happen. You know, a job to find someone making a knife out of a file. Now it's all the rage. Alright, so we're just about there with the coarse stuff. I think it's about time to try and finish it off with a bit of finer stuff. That does feel nice. You can see down the bottom there, which is the actual top, wants a bit more going over. So, the use for that belt that broke yesterday, or not yesterday, in the last video. It's a nice fine one. So I'm just going to give it a good old go. Try and get as many of the work marks out as I can. Wood really, well, so does metal, but wood really shows up tool marks once you've put some sort of coating on it, whether it be varnish or wax or oil or whatever. It's starting to feel nice and smooth. Don't know what grit this is. What does it say? 280. Yep, 280, so it's quite a fine one. Not the finest obviously, but I think it's going to be amply fine for this bit of wood. This is going to get pretty boring. Turn it over and do the other side. This is going to get very boring. I shall cut this bit short because you can tell what I'm doing. Now I've left this virtually dead straight, this handle. No finger holds or anything like that, purely because I just like the look of it being plain. So, and obviously it's easier. Right, so there we go, I've cut this bit out and finished it off, and I'm quite pleased with that now. It's come up nice and smooth, lovely to the touch. So what I'm going to do, before I go on to sharpen it, I'm going to put this on it, the tung oil. Basically because it's highly water resistant and it's completely food safe, so you can use it on chopping boards and anything that you're going to use with food. So I thought it was perfect for the job. So I'm just going to get, I've just got a bit of old tissue here. Well, it's not old tissue, a bit of tissue type material. It's stuff you get on a roll. It's quite thick, this oil. Never used it before, but it smells quite nice. It's got a neutral smell, really. It's not perfumed or anything like that. It's unusual, but it's quite nice. I shall give it a couple of coats, but I'm just giving it a coat now before I go on to sharpening it, because I think it might just protect it from any dirt and muck that might happen to get on it whilst I'm sharpening it. Now I think, you know, give it another go with the oil after I've sharpened it. Put the lid on, otherwise that will go over. I don't know if you can see, yeah, look at that, that's brought the colour of that out nicely. It's got some quite nice blonde highlights along the bottom there, which I didn't see before putting the oil on. And across there. So yeah, that's nice, quite like that. So let's get it sharpened. Got my sharpening stone. I've put some gloves on because I don't want to contaminate the oiled handle with any muck off my hands. It hasn't quite dried yet. Now, again, I'm not any expert at sharpening on a stone. Some people like to push, some people like to pull. I'm pulling because I find it easier. I don't tend to do many knives like this. I tend to use my what do you call it? You know, like my bench grind, like my polisher, with some of those Scotch Brite type discs and whatever else discs I've got for my shoeing knives. But this is a little bit different, so I want to get a real good edge on there, and I can't really tell with these gloves on if there's an edge on there or not, but I think it's coming. Let's try a bit of pushing as well. That's not a bad action, I quite like that one. I think we're getting there. See all the muck already off my gloves from where I've been handling other stuff all over the blade, so I'm going to get that off, clean it up and test it. good old paper cutting. I don't know why people do that. I suppose it's quite a good test. I certainly won't be shaving the hairs off my arms or chest because I haven't got any. Very few. I'm pretty hairless. But as you can see, it certainly cuts. I just hope that's going to be sharp enough for what I want. I think it will be. You know, it cuts a bit of paper. Christ, it's got to work, hasn't it? So yeah, I was saying I'm going to get that oil off or whatever it is. Give the handle another coat. Then we'll nip home and try it out. Right, so we're back home. These are my shop bought knives that I tend to generally use for food preparation. I try and keep them fairly sharp. And there's the one I've just made. Bit of a monster in comparison. But I think it's going to be quite handy. I like it. You can see the oil soaked in now. I might give it another coat as it's soaked in quite well. Now it's got a mark there. I'm not sure if that's a split or whether it's just a blemish in the wood, but either way I'm not too worried because it's for my own personal use. You know, if I was selling that or making it for someone, I think I'd have to do that again. You see I've got the slight matte, well not really matte or satin, it's not shiny finish, but or not mirror finish. So let's see what it can do. The good old cucumber. Now, all these knives, I always find this whenever you try out a new knife, they've got a different angle that you have to hold them at to get them to cut. I don't know if that's the angle that you sharpen them at or what, but this is quite nice. It's very, very easily cutting through there. Obviously it's only cucumber, but yeah, it works nicely. So they'll go in my sandwiches. That dog can have that bit. Let's see what else we can find in the fridge to try it out on. Oh, I know what we'll do first. We'll cut up the rolls. These are very fresh, so they're very soft, and look at that knife through butter. Lovely. Very soft inside. So I tend to use, you know, one knife for virtually everything when I'm making the sandwiches anyway. So let's see what else we've got in here. I've got some cheese in here somewhere. See how easily this cuts, because this is quite crumbly cheddar, and generally when I cut it, it falls to pieces as you cut it, and that isn't. That's gone through there lovely. Yeah, even quite thinly that's cut rather than crumbled. I'm pleased with that. Yep, very nice, very happy. Second attempt, much better than the first. So I hope you've liked that little couple of episodes to make it, and we'll catch you on the next one.